Hello and welcome to Straightforward, Levant TV's weekly show shedding light on stories and events that matter in the Middle East, where most of the times things are said in shades of grey. For that reason, the show is called Straightforward, a platform for debate where all views are welcome, and even more, a platform for researchers, analysts, academics and policy experts, not only to argue, but to tell us of their significant findings on Middle East issues. Very recently, we saw the unsurprising resignation in Egypt, that of Prime Minister Hazem al-Biblawi and his government, of course. Following that came strict military control over mosques to make sure Friday sermons do not enhance dissent. We also saw a court ban on Hamas and freezing its assets in the country. With me today in the studio is Dr. Mohammad Ghanem, political activist from the Muslim Brotherhood. Welcome to the show. And Mr. Omar Ismail, political analyst and member of the Labour Party in the UK. Thank you very much for joining us as well at Levant TV studios in London. Also joining us over the phone is Nervana Mahmoud, commentator and blogger, also part of the BBC's 100 Women debate, which took place in October last year. Welcome on Straightforward. And before we start our very direct discussion today, let's take a look at this special report on recent happenings in Egypt.
Hazem al-Biblawi's sudden resignation as Egypt's Prime Minister did not only take Egypt by surprise, but apparently even some of his ministers as well, according to some reports floating around. Minister of Higher Education Hossein Issa, for example, told Foreign Policy that he knew about it when Biblawi started speaking. Yet in another interview, he swore he had no idea why the resignation took place. On the 25th of February, former National Democratic Party member Ibrahim Mahlab was formally tapped as Biblawi's successor. While seen as a capable man, detractors made allegations of corruption, while others pointed out his NDP background. But for many, being a member of the notorious Gamal Mubarak-led Policies Committee was a bad signal of Egypt moving backwards. For supporters of the Brotherhood and Morsi, Biblawi was seen as the man who helmed a government that oversaw the most brutal crackdown in Egypt's history. For many of the pro-January 2011 revolution crowd, especially the young, Biblawi's government was seen as either green-lighting a slide into a police state and the restoration of an evolved version of the Mubarak era. New PM Mahlab stated he will focus on security, defeating terrorism, investments, the strikes and worker demands. That's mostly it for the Prime Minister, but who's going to be president? Everyone knows that the next president will face a considerable amount of serious problems. A deteriorating economy, energy crises, internal and external debts, and worst of all, a population exhausted from 3 years of revolution with hardly any hope and looking for a saviour. Some expect him to fail, some hope he will succeed, and some will work to overthrow him. It is all speculation, but one fact stands clear. Many analysts make it clear that no one in Egypt, not even the military establishment, can take on the responsibility alone and solve all the aforementioned problems. This is why my answer was that it matters not who. Whether it is Field Marshal Abdel Fattah Al-Sisi or any other figure, the following questions arise. Will the President be able to invite and convince all members of the political spectrum to share responsibility in running the country, including political rivals such as Salafist and the Muslim Brotherhood? Would the President be able to rehabilitate the police system and change its creed from that of protecting the regime to that of providing security for its citizens? Will he be able to provide the opportunity for political parties and political life as a whole to work freely without intervention from the attempts of security apparatuses to dominate and sabotage them? The formula may seem like a dream, but according to some analysts, it is the most realistic one if the active political actors want to avoid colliding and crashing the Egyptian state into the wall of economic crisis, terrorism, and regional and international wills opposing the interests of Egypt.
Dramatic changes indeed on the Egyptian scene in the last 2 weeks. Let's start the first section by talking about the ending of Mohammad Morsi's presidency and the shift back to military rule under Field Marshal Abdel Fattah Al-Sisi. Dr. Al-Ghanem, let's go back to the starting point of the report where President Morsi was ousted in General Sisi's press address last year in June. What would you be able to say about that? How would you comment about the style of the ousting of President Morsi from a constitutional perspective?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. We must say first, the situation in Egypt was that Dr. Morsi was being elected by the people. there was the parliament, there was the constitution. All these has been agreed by the people in the most democratic, transparent election. Then there was the constitution, which cannot allow Al-Sisi, doesn't give him any power, because he was just a minister or defense minister. What he's done is actually against the constitution, against the law, against the will of the people. Although we do agree there is some people politically was indifferent or didn't like what Morsi does. Not Muslim Brotherhood, because Morsi was elected by the Egyptian people, not by the Muslim Brotherhood.
And before we move to Nervana, Mahmoud, which would be with us over the phone, let me just ask you a quick question. Could we then say that this is a first in modern day Egyptian politics, the style itself of ousting an Egyptian president by General Sisi?
It's not the first. This 52 revolution is similar.
Similar.
It's the same. What has happened is the army does not like anybody to share him the power. Then the army, when he sees that the will of the people is dominating, or democracy dominating the political environment, he's not used to do that. That's why he planned, and I think, I will say, the army with the gangster from the police force, they got together to plan the counter-revolution from day one, from 25th of January.
I found this a little bit rich, because the history of the Muslim Brotherhood throughout the revolution, if one can call it the revolution, from 1952 until now, and until the 30th of June, you were quite happy to actually share the same bed with the army that you now denounce. And I'll give you an examples. There are many. During Sadat's time, it was accepted that the Muslim Brotherhood would play a role in the political life of Egypt. During Mubarak time, again, he's an army person, and as you said, the army is quite jealous, or that's what you're referring to, of sharing powers with anybody else. But you were quite happy to work with them, even as recent as prior to the election of Morsi. You struck deals with Tantawi, who was a field marshal of the army at that time. So I don't accept your argument. Your argument is actually contrived. It is not correct, and it's designed to mislead and confuse people. The army has played a role, I agree with you, in correcting what happened in the 30th of June and the 3rd of July, based on the fact that if the army did not interfere at that time, there would have been a civil war in Egypt.
That's not true.
And let me just get, as we are in dire need, of course, to hear the voice of women in the Middle East, let's talk to Nervana Mahmoud, who is with us on the line. Nervana, welcome on Straightforward. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Nervana, we know very well about your blogs and comments. Before we start, we hear a lot that you are not someone we could label. Without being modest, we'd like to know from you, what do you do, what part of Egypt you come from, and who do you represent?
I am originally from Cairo, and I live here in the UK. I'm a doctor and a blogger and commentator, as you mentioned. I don't represent anybody. I'm trying to reflect about what's going on and try to relay the voice of the youth of Egypt who feel marginalized at the moment.
What is your stance on Egypt, on what is happening on Egypt today from the last 2 weeks onwards?
Right. I found it very sad and frankly tragic that 6 months after the fall of Morsi, and there is no serious reflection from the Muslim Brotherhood side about their contribution to the failure of Morsi rule of Egypt. We had a chance to have a democracy, and we failed drastically. And this failure is a failure of a lot of people. However, the Muslim Brotherhood were in power and they should accept that their fair share, which was the major share of failure. June the 30th was not just a counter-revolution, it was also a revolution and a state revolution. A lot of people turned against Morsi, including many ordinary Christians. However, I am not supporting military rule. Like your guest from the other side, we had already 60 years of military rule or partial military rule, and nobody wants that again. So I am not with the military and I'm not with the political Islam. Both failed Egypt, and the last 60 years is a big statement which prove my point.
Before we move on to replies from the guests here in the studio, Nervana, while you not only represent the women in Egypt, tell us what you think of women's rights under the Muslim Brotherhood when they ruled.
I mean, I'm humbled you say I represent women. I'm just trying to reflect some of the opinions. Thank you. We're talking about the Muslim Brotherhood rule. We have to admit that they didn't improve the stance of women in Egypt. B, they even trying to regress and push some of the rights which were guaranteed during Mubarak time and trying to push it to one side. I heard several statements from some of the Muslim Brotherhood sisters who are arguing that they wanted to reverse some of the rights of women in divorce law. They want to even legalize a lot of things like legal mutilation of women.
Let me get Dr. Ghanem to engage with you on that point, particularly when it comes to women gender mutilation, for example. Nervana Mahmoud was just speaking to us about gender mutilation with women under the Muslim Brotherhood as a plan. It did not happen yet. It wasn't really, they didn't give the go-ahead by the parliament. What do you have to say about things like that?
Well, it's just ridiculous. Nobody in a Muslim who understands Islam can agree to mutilation or women mutilation, whatever. This word does not appear in our dictionary. These all issues has been created to label Islam in general. You see here the media in Europe try to promote this as a part of the Islam, which is nothing to do with Islam. We don't believe in that at all. And I would tell you that the women in Islam 1500 years ago have all rights, which hasn't for the modern Europe didn't get it for 100 years. Then all these things they talking about mutilation and they marry the young girls and all these things. It's just ridiculous.
So is it media propaganda? Are we saying it's media propaganda?
It is Islamophobia and designed.
Nervana, sorry, you were saying something, Nervana?
Yes, please. First, can we please stop shifting the debate to Islam? I am talking about the Muslim Brotherhood, not Islam. So the talk about Islamophobia here is a ridiculous talk. Number two, you can say all that to the MP or the ex-MP Azza al-Garf, who had several reports defending genital mutilation, and it was widely reported, including in the Foreign Policy magazine. Yes. She can deny that if she wishes.
Not as a basis from the Islamic rules.
Yeah, but that's what you wanted to do.
No, it's not an Islamic ritual or Islamic rules. Give me one rule of Islam which say that.
Omar Ismail?
Can I just correct what Dr. Nervana just said? I am not in support of the military, as she indicated. I am here representing Egypt, talking about Egypt.
Which Egypt?
The Egypt that is lost between the fascism of Islam or the Muslim Brotherhood and the fascism of the state.
Right? How could you say fascism?
Can I just finish? And I think it is important to make that distinction. That 60 years of military rule. I simply, when I challenged Dr. Ghanem, I just wanted to actually prove to your viewers the two-face politics that the Muslim Brotherhood has taken from has practiced since its inception in 1928. So I think really that Egypt now is lost between the two. And the 6 months, as quite Dr. Nervana has just said, 6 months has gone by, nothing is happening, the economy is collapsing, the conditions in the country is not as good as this revolution on the 25th of January wanted it to be. The Egyptians are suffering.
We will come back to this point in the second part of our show. Let me get back to Nervana before we. My last question to you, Nervana Mahmoud. There was a compromise in the case of Tunisia in the new constitution when it came to women's rights, particularly. Nervana, do you think the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt, should they have stayed in power, would have been able to do a compromise like the one that happened in Egypt, where women's rights are guaranteed in the constitution?
I wish they made this compromise. I wish they made a compromise in general. I wished on 29th of June, Morsi made compromise and tried to stop the coup from happening. But I can say that Tunisia learned from Egypt. It's not the other way around. If June the 30th didn't happen, maybe we will not get the Tunisians will not get the same rights they are enjoying now in their constitution.
Sure. Thank you very much, Nervana, for joining us today. We will get back to you and engage our guests, but we will be here in the studio, so you're very welcome to continue watching this debate.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Dr. Ghanem, you don't seem to agree a lot with what Nervana Mahmoud was saying.
I don't agree, because when you say the Muslim Brotherhood was in power, that's wrong. What was in power is being elected by the people. It was a democratic process. Egypt have lived 1 year in a democratic atmosphere. It hasn't have 4,000 years. And what record show these things? Look at the media. We never stopped the media. The election was very clear and transparent, and Morsi wasn't ruling by Muslim Brotherhood. No, it was ruling according to the will of the people. And what Sisi
was it the will of the people to protect his own decision and constitutional decisions? What was it? It's a simple question, because this is the first thing that your democratic elected president done, and that shakes people's belief in a democracy. And I think if we are talking about the Muslim Brotherhood, being Democrat is like talking about Adolf Hitler. You can. It's you're entitled to your opinion, but I'm just trying. Let me finish.
Morsi was elected by the people.
So was Adolf Hitler.
We can't really compare, but
yes, you can.
I do understand where you're coming from.
I think this is a fascist, a religious fascist group that wanted to take.
There is no such thing in Islam.
Listen. Just
in what sense would it be fascist?
Let me finish the point.
It's what happened. Sisi done.
Let me finish the point.
Let's get back to him in a second. One second.
You can challenge me. I want to finish the point. We only have to look at the two countries around Egypt, which has an Islamist rules. Hamas in Gaza and Sudan in the south, both Islamic countries. How many elections did they have since they came into power? How many elections? I think Dr. Ghanem can answer that. None. And I can assure you, none would have happened under.
Are we talking here, Mr. Ismail, about elections, 99.99% elections like the ones that
I wouldn't.
Big dynasties to stay in power? No. Or are we talking about real elections?
Are we talking about real elections? Nothing happened in Sudan under Islamist government, and nothing happened in Hamas. Hamas came in 2005, and it still has not held an election under its own constitution. And that is an Islamist system, and exactly the same, has the same ideology, the same thinking of the Muslim Brotherhood.
Dr. Ghanem.
Well, I wouldn't compare Hamas and Sudan and Egypt because they're all completely different. What I'm asking you, when Morsi came, was elected by the people in the most transparent and clear election or not? That's the question. Did Morsi, when he came to power, he did put the constitution or was an elected committee which done the constitution? And when they done the constitution, there were a referendum which if people have agreed to constitution or not. Comparing that to what Sisi does, can anybody have a mind or a democratic feeling, democratic principle, can agree on that?
Dr. Ghanem, you know as well as I do that I voted for Morsi. And he has let me down badly.
Okay.
And I tell you why.
I didn't know that.
Now, let me explain. Let me explain as to why he let me down.
By what the Sisi done?
Well, any length of time, waiting to correct it for 4 years, there wouldn't have been any democracy. The whole ideology of the Muslim Brotherhood is actually built on obedience, not democracy. Obedience, and obedience, and you do not challenge
anybody. Talking about election and democracy.
But you are
is Egypt now live in democracy?
Now is the transition period.
Now there is an excuse.
I'm not
There's an excuse.
It is a transition period.
No, you either accept democracy or not. There was a constitution agreed by the people.
Is a transitional period used as an excuse to implement things that some people were not happy about?
8 months now, and Morsi has 1 year. That was more transmission period than what it's doing now.
I will give you that point, but and I think really you really need to look at Egypt as it is now. Egypt now is actually fighting a war of terror.
Against who are the terrorists?
Visited on them by the friends of the Muslim Brotherhood. I wouldn't say, oh, of course.
Not the Muslim Brotherhood itself.
Well, I have no evidence that the Muslim Brotherhood does this. And until I see the fingerprints of the Muslim Brotherhood, I can't say it. But I have not seen, well, the Beit al-Maqdis, the Daesh, the groups that come in from Hamas.
Now coming in the equation.
Yes, they are. Azawari before Azawari went Al-Qaeda, Ayman al-Zawahiri, before he went Al-Qaeda, he was a member of the Muslim Brotherhood too. His brother was still there as a Muslim Brotherhood member.
It doesn't mean that the Muslim Brotherhood adopts its ex-members' ideology.
It does, because the history of the Muslim Brotherhood tells you what they are capable of doing.
You accept the massacre what's happened in Rabaa al-Adawiyya and Nahda. You accept it. That's what they've done.
It hurts me to see a Muslim and an Egyptian blood being spilled
every single day.
Yeah,
but you can't even say a word against this coup.
Well, yes, I can say a word against this coup. When this coup proved to me they are not protecting the interests of the Egyptian, they are not protecting the whole country. That is, it was sold the peace at the time, peace in Sinai for the Palestinian, and Halayib in the south for the Sudan.
Let's save a little bit of that to our next section, because the first section was more a background of the recent happenings. We will get in depth in the next section. That was just a background from the previous happenings in Egypt. Let's move now to the changes that took place during the interim presidency of Adli Mansour and the military rule of General Sisi. My first question goes to you, Dr. Al-Ghanem. Why is the current interim rule in Egypt doing everything that it could to isolate the Muslim Brotherhood and make sure none of its figures is in power?
Because the key word here is the will of the people. When the people elected their representative and they making them accountable for their action. The army or the Sisi, what he want to do is to ignore that completely in order to carry on the policy they used to do whatever they like without any accountability. And the Sisi, when he did his coup and with the gangster, his gangster,
who's the gangster? Who's the gangster?
The gangster is the police force, some of the judges, and the media.
The judges?
Yes. The juristic system has been bought by loyalty to the army. Somehow, we've seen it. There is an evident. Is clearly.
Is this not an extreme statement, Dr. Ghanem?
It's not an
towards
extreme.
The judiciary
When
in
you
Egypt?
see somebody like a Zend, who's the head of the juristic club, saying, if we know that the Muslim Brotherhood will come out of an election, free election, we would have never guaranteed the election, or whatever the word they do in the election. This is very clear. You can see it today by how the judges behave when they give a child 5 years in prison. When they take a girl.
What child? You mean a child from the Muslim Brotherhood?
It's not just the Muslim Brotherhood. Anybody against the coup. Anybody has to say his own word. The whole system today is against him. Not because this what the people wish, because the people carrying gun, the gangster carrying the gun, trying to force people in this situation to bow to the army and the gangster from the police and the army and the media.
I take it you're saying here very blatantly that the judiciary body in Egypt is completely corrupt.
It's not all of it.
Not all
but
of
there is a plan. They put some of it in the head of the juristic system, and those are the people who are corrupting the whole body of the jurisdiction.
A plan by the military, I take it.
By the military, yes.
What evidence do you have to support these outlandish claims? The whole, are you telling me the whole justice system in Egypt is corrupt? Is that what you're saying?
What is
or is
happening?
it just a prelude to
No,
what to maybe Mr. Morsi getting a 20 or 30 years?
Simple. Just
or getting
between
executed.
the entity as a whole and member of those judges. Zend, for example, the head of the court at the moment, which they pass
this is
punishment.
This is
which
not evidence,
known.
my friend.
This isn't.
I've known you for a very long time, Dr. Ghanem, and you are a respectable man. And when you make a claim such as this, you must produce evidence. Think and believe it is your own, not evidence.
Yeah, a very, very simple one. Look at Morsi and all the parliament before the previous parliament, now in the prison. And the judges allow them to do so. To be in the prison, to be accused, and to be ready for punishment.
Okay.
That's a jungle. That's no constitution
I
in the world.
Moving to you, Mr. Omar Ismail, my second question. Are figures from the Muslim Brotherhood leadership considered incapable, not in general, but incapable of dealing with the pressures of the shift in Egyptian politics that they are expected to achieve when they had their chance? We hear a lot worldwide that they might be not bad, but they are politically incapable. Sometimes they are very good at things, but not in all things, not at all things. Tell us more.
I think really for someone who, as you know, I don't live in Egypt now, but I have a huge number of friends and families. I do visit Egypt quite regularly. And I did visit Egypt during Morsi's time, and I did visit Egypt recently as well. And I think there are differences, and tangible differences that you can feel. Yes, I agree with you that at the time when Morsi took office, the Muslim Brotherhood had a huge curve of learning, and learning something basic.
They didn't have their chance to learn even.
Well, no, because they were busy trying to dominate, or at least trying to pretend to be a democrat and dominate the essence of government, control every bit of the government, of the state.
For example?
To make it Muslim Brotherhood. It was a question of not what you know, it is a question of who you know. It wasn't about capability and qualification, it's about loyalty and obedience. to the
corporate
leadership.
state, basically.
It is the corporate state that they would started attacking. They came in, and I believe the message, because I thought, after 80 years in the wilderness, here is your chance. I'm willing to give my vote to you. So when I give you my vote, I expect you to respect that vote. It's a two-way thing. If the people of Egypt have given you the vote, you have to respect that vote as well and deliver in what you promised that you're going to deliver. Not contrive problems after problems after problems, and then starting blaming what they name or call as a deep state. I don't know what that means, deep state, but they're trying to give the illusion that what's happening, actually, they are not in control. Then my answer, or at least my point then would be, is if you are not in control and you're elected to be in control and you can't control the government, then you're not good enough to rule Egypt.
That brings us back to my word, their capability, their political capability. But you mentioned something else which relates to credibility in terms of trusting the people who voted for them. They need to maintain that level of trust between the two.
They couldn't.
They failed to do so?
They failed to do so miserably.
Not even with their supporters?
Supporters, well, let's look at the supporters, first of all. The supporters are a pool of people who are economically in dire need.
And dire need of what?
In dire need of services, whatever that is. 60% of the Egyptians live beneath the poverty line.
Dr. Ghanem, what do you have to say about that?
I respect capability, credibility, whatever you say. I am saying and claiming there is no other way to prove that but through democratic process. We had the democratic process. We respect the democratic process. The Egyptian people have voted for people they trust, and they are capable of punishing them politically. That's the game the whole humanity learn up to date. There is no other way. But coming from the military by the gun, suppressing the process, the democratic process, and killing people, the massacre of Rabaa, killing people, detaining people. Today or yesterday was the Women's Day. What's happening in Egypt in the Matar, the airport, detaining 150 women coming to Gaza, going to visit Gaza, and they treat them very badly. Is that democracy?
Not quite
we
sure
also knew, of course, of the Morsi, under Morsi, and that's one of his charges, of course, now at court. It's oppressing protesters as well, like you said, using guns and crimes as well. So
that's an illusion. That's an excuse.
Do you think never happened? It never happened. You're saying it never happened?
If it happened,
yes.
If somebody claimed that, wouldn't Mr. Morsi's.
So it's only allegations.
It's allegation, and the responsibility for the army and the police force, not for the Morsi. But what happened? You know, today, look at the statistic. About 4,000 people killed. Mm-hmm. About more than 20,000 people detained and being killed slowly by denying them the medical attention, denying a human
Is this under
right.
the interim government?
That's what's happening today in the interim government. But it's no interim government. It's Sisi and him gangster.
How would someone with so much blood on his hands be a candidate for presidency of such a major country in the Middle East? That's because assuming it's right, whatever you just said.
So he will never be president of Egypt by the consent of the people. But by the gun, he will maybe for a time, but the Egyptian people will never refuse to lose the freedom they gained in the revolution of 25th of January.
Dr. Al-Ghanem, do you think the alienation or isolation of the Muslim Brotherhood has to do with protecting minority rights in Egypt, including the rights of the Copts? We've seen worrisome attacks on places of worship in Egypt and in Cairo, in Iskandariya and around the country, churches namely, to be very straightforward. What do you have to say about that?
Yeah. For Christian or Muslim, they never attack each other. The whole game by the government, by the dictatorship, by the army and the police force in order divide to rule policy.
To fuel tensions.
To get their support. That's it. That's the game. Since Nasser, he's created that game and is still playing until today.
How many churches were burned since Nasser until the 25th of January?
No, but look at the church.
How many? Tell us some facts.
Well, no, I don't know, because he's just Dr. Ghanem has just made a statement.
You've seen
it is the army, it is the state, it is the government,
yes,
it is the police,
it is.
And it is never their fault.
You've seen
it's never their
Tahrir
fault.
Square, the whole world has seen, Christian and Muslim.
Yeah. You were not part of this.
Yeah,
you were not part
each
of this.
other.
You
But
were
the
actually
whole world
denied
seen.
entrance to the Tahrir
But I am an
Square
Egyptian.
on the 25th
I
of
have
January.
friend from
You
the
were
Christian.
kicked out, and your leadership have told your youth and told you and told the entire movement not to get involved. And al-wala lil-qa'id, al-wala, and this is the obedience,
The allegiance.
the allegiance
That's not-
and the obedience
that's not
to the
true.
leader.
to the leader.
That's not true.
Now-
We are a democratic. We believe in democracy.
You don't believe in
and,
democracy.
We believe and practice democracy.
don't.
And we have done
Tell us-
practice democracy in Egypt, which for
If
thousands of
you're-
years, it has never appeared as clear as the Morsi time.
Dr. Ghanem, let's get back to democracy. You just mentioned that the Muslim Brotherhood practices democracy in supposedly the right way. Now, what about minority rights in a democratic country? They have the right to worship. That's international law, that's
Absolutely,
humanitarian, human rights,
absolutely,
basic human rights, the rights
yes.
of worship.
Yes, absolutely.
You're denying the involvement of the Muslim Brotherhood in this,
In what?
in the
Burning
burning of churches.
We
or-
no, I will tell you.
Yes.
No Christian go and burn a mosque. Neither any Muslim go and touch any.
Yes, we're not blaming the people, the Christians or Muslims. We have all respects for all religions, but we're talking about the leadership.
No,
we're
leadership.
talking about.
I've been in this group. Get me.
Who's
the
telling these
literature.
individuals to
I
do
will
this?
give you a lecture.
Of
I will
course,
simply
of course,
ask you a question.
The people in power,
If you
the
allow me,
dictatorship.
ask you one question. Ask one question.
To Dr. Ghanem.
Yeah, Dr. Ghanem, yes. How many of your leadership came out in support of the brothers, the Coptic brother of Egypt, when these churches were burned? None whatsoever.
We all came
None
and
whatsoever.
denounced any
Not
aggression
one word.
against any
Not
Christian
one word.
person or an
Not
Indian
one
church
word.
or any institution.
Not one word.
There is full of words.
Give us
And I'm telling
examples.
you,
Yeah, give
Dr.
us
I'm telling you.
Ghanem.
Okay, me, who said what?
I'm not going to get the books.
No. Tell
No,
me who
but
said
maybe
what.
a leader.
I
a
will
leader.
tell you something. In the Ramadan, I will ask you a question.
Yeah.
How many churches they do iftar in Ramadan?
Well, this
how
is-
many Muslim Brotherhood?
I am not
sharing
quite sure.
that?
I'm not
That's
quite
it.
sure why.
That's how it
why
should be.
Why?
That's always the
Do
case.
you
Yeah.
believe so
That-
as a Muslim Brotherhood
I believe
member?
so.
Do you
I
believe in the
so.
conviviality in
We believe-
Egypt?
We believe.
You as a member, but does the leadership believe in such?
100%, because who is the leadership? Comes democratic. We vote for this leadership. It doesn't come from the
burning
space.
of a church was not a manifestation of what you are saying as a member, of course,
It's,
that you want to live equally
we
with
know
Christians.
by evidence, and it's been proved, that all the violation against
What is
mosque
the evidence?
and the church is
I-
by
is
the
that the same
government, by
army?
the
Yes.
dictatorship.
Yeah.
Is that the same army that you're talking about that are now building these churches? Is that the same army that you're accused of burning the churches or bombing?
Exactly. He
and
built
now,
and he
now
destroyed.
and destroy and now
Yes.
building them?
This is the only way for a dictatorship to. You know
I'm
better
sorry,
than me.
Mr. Ghanem,
divide to rule
Dr.
policy.
Dr. Ghanem,
This is the only way
Dr.
for the
Ghanem,
dictatorship to
I
rise
think-
up
I
to
think-
split the nation.
I think you'll find that the viewer is much more intelligent and much more sophisticated to know when it is not true what you say.
When I'm telling you, you yourself would never believe and get a shred of evidence that as a member of Muslim Brotherhood or any Islamist rather than the extreme or fanatic, which is mad.
Like who?
He does
Like who?
I don't know. But
Are you
for
hinting
the
at
people I
Salafis
know,
here? Are you hinting at the Salafis?
I don't hint to anyone. But I'm saying, as a Muslim, proper Muslim, which I
Who's
am,
a proper Muslim and who's
which
not?
is the one who's modest, who's
No, I really want to know. I'm
it's
just
a very
curious.
good question.
the
I
one
agree with
who's
you. I'm sorry.
is humble, who worked for humanity,
Yeah.
not for a Muslim or a Christian. We believe in all religion, all belief, even for the people who does not believe, we respect them because the Quran say, وَقُلْ الْحَقُّ مِنْ رَبِّكُمْ فَمَنْ شَاءَ فَلْيُؤْمِنْ وَمَنْ شَاءَ فَلْيَكْفُرْ. Whoever
A verse
should
from the
believe
Quran, yes.
should do so. Then who am I to deny somebody of his belief or to go and destroy his private owner entity or property? There is no way has a mind which believe in Islam can agree in these things.
Very good point. Dr. Al-Ghanem, Egypt is a country extremely rich in history, thousands of years of heritage, historical heritage that the world is looking on, especially now that the country is on the verge of being in flames, especially in some parts of it. Now, even in its modern history, we've seen, for example, the big movie industry that employs a lot of Egyptian people, especially the youth, the creative youth, women and men equally. How could this be preserved under any Islamic regime, especially that of the Muslim Brotherhood? We've heard and read a lot about censorship that will go even backwards and dig the archives, whatever is on Egyptian television, and ban it.
It's all propaganda.
Propaganda?
Islam fraud
Right.
of democracy.
Please don't keep talking about Islam. We're talking about Muslim Brotherhood.
Yeah, but what we
No, you're talking
we
about
believe in
Muslim.
Islam.
You're an
Maybe just the
ideology.
Maybe just a background.
Okay.
I am Muslim Brotherhood, believe in what? Believe in Islam. Our reference is the Quran and Sunnah, which is the main reference for Islam.
Yes.
That doesn't mean we all copy with each other. That Islam allow diversity if understanding the text. But the main principle is the same. There is no Muslim in the world can violate any human right for another human being. Not
What
for a
about the
Muslim or
right to
non-Muslim.
expression in art, in movie production, in music? Is, for instance, a big legend, for example, like theater, in
That's
the movie
why we
industry,
say- that's
like
why
Fatin
we
Hamama,
saw- we saw
is she not an Egyptian? Is she not Muslim?
That's by democracy.
Yes.
When democracy has a body to legislate, this body is representative of the people, the whole people. And whatever they legislate in favor for those people. If the people don't like it, they get rid of them and they get the people to legislate what they like. And this is the human being invention which nobody else had produced anything else. What Egypt need now is democracy. Get rid of the army. The army is fundamentally this. The army is to protect the border, to deal with the enemy, not to kill its own, buy its own money. That's something beyond any convention or any constitution.
We will now move on the next part and talk about these issues, especially under the possible rule of General Sisi if he potentially became president. We will get to that in the next and last part of our show today. That was a heated discussion a bit earlier, and moving on now to the last section where we talk about the challenges facing Egypt's new president or the president of a new Egypt. Which one do you think, Dr. Ghanem? Is it a new Egypt or a new Egyptian president?
Well, I'm just really confused. Egypt at the moment has no system, has no future president unless you bring democracy. I will give you an example. Last week, we had Sisi and Adli Mansour and Mohammad Ibrahim sitting in front of the media, the international media. They claiming by the army they found an apparatus or an instrument which cure AIDS and virus C. And in the world, it's become like a joke. And if you tell me those three people who's going to lead Egypt, I would say Egypt will be better off without them. But under the gun, what system is going to come? The resistance to that coup will carry on, and the Egyptian people will bring back democracy and will bring back a leader, another leader, which they choose and trust, without denying any section, any right.
Mr. Omar Ismail, will Marshal Abdel Fattah al-Sisi be able to invite and convince all members of the political fabric to share responsibility in running the country, including Salafists and political rivals such as the Muslim Brotherhood, of course?
The Salafists, as we know, have appeared with the Sisi on the declaration of the 3rd of July.
We mentioned that.
So they play an important part in that. Muslim Brotherhood too were invited in the 3rd of July to join. They refused. They also refused to join.
Could you
in
invite them after you ousted them?
Well, they were still at that time part of the fabric, as you call it, of the political system in Egypt. One cannot deny that there is a Muslim Brotherhood, there is a movement, it is an ideology, and you cannot destroy an ideology just by killing or imprisoning that ideology. The ideology doesn't live physically, it lives in people's conscience. So just going back to that point, I don't think the Sisi or anybody excluded the Muslim Brotherhood. What happened is the Muslim Brotherhood excluded themselves. They denied the right of the Egyptian people to correct their revolution. Okay, there was an election, but I'll just give you an example. If I appoint a chief executive officer in a company with the understanding that this chief executive officer within a set time is going to achieve the goals that I set for him, and within the 12 months that he has taken post, it has become absolutely and abundantly clear that he cannot do the job. Do I wait for his contract to finish, or do I actually fire him and sack him? And that's what's happened.
There's a constitution, of course, that will set the answer to that.
Yeah, I agree. But there was a huge amount of pressure on Morsi to actually either democratically step down. Well, it wasn't actually an invitation to step down. He was advised to actually call a referendum and an early election. The powers that control in the country, it is his advisors, people around him. He would not listen to the reason. If the army has left the scene as it was on the 30th of June, and we've seen on that Friday people being killed in Cairo, in 6th of October bridge, people being killed and chasing each other. Something has never happened in Egypt, and that is because of the Muslim Brotherhood. They do not want to lose Egypt, because the loss of Egypt, it actually represents a loss of influence worldwide for their movement. The question that you pose is a very important one. Do the Egyptian now want the Muslim Brotherhood when there is a general feeling that their hand is smothered with the Egyptian blood? Do they want them back? It is up to the Egyptian people, firstly. Secondly, it's also up to the Muslim Brotherhood if they want to be rehabilitated in the political system. Yes. They have to denounce, firstly, that they have to denounce, that, like they did before, violence and terrorism, and begin to rebuild the trust. It would sadden me to see capabilities, and I'm not talking about my age or Dr. Ghanem age. I'm talking about the young generation. You've had your time, you failed. Give the opportunity to the young people to rehabilitate the movement, become a political movement again without the religion. With that, you can use your own objective, that is being drawn from the teaching of Islam.
You're just assuming that he's a terrorist now, somehow.
I am not assuming he's a terrorist.
Are you asserting?
No.
Okay, sorry.
And I'm saying I have not heard the Muslim Brotherhood or any of the leadership, whether they are in prison, outside the country, inside the country, denouncing what's happening in the name of Islam, in the name of the movement. And that is very dangerous.
Is it because they don't have a platform maybe in the media?
But that is not an excuse to kill Egyptian. You cannot, two wrongs don't make a right. If Dr. Ghanem is complaining about people being killed in Rabaa al-Adawiyya and al-Nahda, it is equally wrong to subject to the Egyptian to this level of terrorism.
Dr. Ghanem, would the president, if he became president, Al-Sisi, be able to rehabilitate the police system and change its creed from that of protecting the regime to that of providing security for the Egyptian citizens?
Well, I can't say Sisi is capable of anything. There is no history of him for any qualification in political or in experience. This man has dreamed to be a president of Egypt, and he will kill half of the Egyptian people to be a president of Egypt. When Dr. Omar is talking about killing, who's killing? The only one who kills is the Sisi and his gangster. I will come back to the real thing. In 30th of July, Sisi and his gangster has derailed the democratic process in Egypt. There is no other way. There is no future for Egypt. Sisi did that derail, not for the Egyptian people,
what
for his own.
What about the people in the streets, Dr. Ghanem, who wanted him to step down? I'm talking about the ones who wanted him to step down. Prior to June, millions, of course.
Of course, we accept that. But that was political. That wasn't within the political sphere.
No,
that was
but in a democracy which you encourage.
Democracy, yes. And if we come to the details,
yes.
Morsi accept that, but he said, let us do the parliament first. Then we do.
Not the
politically, whatever it is.
He did not accept.
He said we'll do a referendum, an early election, but after the parliament.
Contrasting
at least
views
we have.
He hasn't done that.
Sisi
he has
lied.
Actually refused. Well,
Sisi breathed lies. He lied. He appointed 3 witnesses, and the 3 witnesses say Sisi lies. He lies every day. Everything he said.
Well, I'm not quite sure who tells the truth here. According to you, nobody is capable. Excuse, just let me just finish the point, please. According to you, there is nobody capable of telling the truth in Egypt. There is a country that's been ruled by terrorists and gangsters, according to you. A country that is ruled by a gangster called the Sisi. He's killing the Egyptian people. He's prepared to kill half of the Egyptian people to become a president. I found that a little bit demeaning to the viewer.
That's what's happening?
No, that is what's happening in your mind, Dr. Ghanem. That's what happened in Dr. Ghanem. Dr. Ghanem, when Ban Ki-moon denounces what's happened in Egypt as terrorism, that is very significant move.
Could he be under pressure?
Under pressure from whom?
Ban Ki-moon.
From whom? This is an independent man, represent the highest organization, international organization, well-respected organization in the world.
What do you have to say, Dr. Ghanem?
What did Ban Ki-moon say? I never heard him say
you didn't
is a
hear
terrorist
what
organization. They refuse. That's the Muslim Brotherhood, a terrorist organization. British government refused.
I'm not quite sure where you get your information from. But you can visit.
European Councillor has described what's happened in Egypt.
I'm glad that you're
out of.
Let's get back to the subject of this section, of course. But President Morsi might be in power or might not. Let's go back to President Sisi. If he was in power, will he be able to provide the opportunity for political parties and political life as a whole to work freely without intervention from the attempts of security apparatuses to dominate and sabotage them?
He would never be able to because he came
Why?
to kill democracy. Then he cannot.
Why would he
produce
kill democracy?
Because that was elected president. That was the referendum for the constitution. There was a parliament elected by the people. He killed all that and lied as he breathed. He would make 3 witnesses that he won the president. The 3 witnesses, a prominent Egyptian figure, they said he lies. Then how do you expect from a liar, a killer, a thief to lead Egypt? That could not happen.
Serious accusations there. A thief, you're talking about corruption similar to the accusations of previous former President Hosni Mubarak. Here, a thief of what? A thief
of stealing people money.
Public money.
Public money.
He's not fully in power yet.
You know,
you mean in his previous capacity?
When he gets his salary from the people's pocket,
yes,
asking him or ordering him to do a certain job, and he doesn't do that job and do something else, and against the people's interest, what do you call that? It's a stealing. It's a failing people of failing to do what he promised people to do, failing the constitution, failing the law, failing the principle by killing people and burning their bodies. What Egypt witnesses in that period, 8 months, never been in the recent history of human being. This man
I could see as to why the Muslim Brotherhood would not be part.
Elaborate?
Yeah, I'll tell you why. Because and I would just refer at what the good doctor said earlier on, and that it's time for the Muslim Brotherhood, I'm paraphrasing here, to admit their mistake, to admit what they've done wrong, and let's turn the page and start afresh. And afresh, by the way, isn't going to be the thinking of Dr. Ghanem or people within that level of the Muslim Brotherhood. Muslim Brotherhood has to look inside itself, admit what they did as a mistake, learn from the mistake, learn what the Egyptian in general want, not what the Muslim Brotherhood want, and then lead them to it.
When did the political party admit of mistakes in modern history in Egypt?
Yeah.
When did they admit?
But we're not. The Muslim Brotherhood isn't a political party. They have a political arm. It's called Al-Hurriya wal-Adala, the Freedom and Justice Party.
But as a president, you expect him to admit, as a former president.
But yes, of course I do.
Does Al-Sisi admit of his previous mistakes?
The admission doesn't have to be, yes, I've done something wrong, but at least start moderating your language and start looking and learn from your mistakes. That is what makes a good politician. It makes it here. Yes, when people make mistakes in this country, they admit and say sorry. It is time.
In this country, in the UK.
Yes.
We can't compare.
Why not?
Because the political context is different. The political culture.
I'm sorry, but the same context that you're talking about is a democracy. True, and if it is we're talking about democracy, then it is the right of people to know when a mistake has been made against them. And there was a mistake made against them. The Muslim Brotherhood didn't deliver what they promised to deliver, albeit their political arm did not deliver what the Egyptian wanted.
We see this in the West as well, where they don't deliver what they promise. We've seen it in the States, we've seen it in Europe, we've seen it in Germany.
And this is what I will allow you a latitude here, because when you don't deliver in a country that is in a magnitude of Britain or the United States, as you mentioned, it isn't the same in Egypt, because Egypt and a dire straight. It needs its economy to pick up. It needs the tourists to come back. It needs their health service. It needs the education service. It needs transport. The problems are endless, and the Muslim Brotherhood have added to it.
As a show, very quickly, Dr. Ghanem, as the show is coming to an end, very quickly.
Political mistake, which has already happened. We all agreed as Muslim Brotherhood and the Alliance, there is mistake. And there is a difference between, is that the mistake, an excuse for what's happening? And if you want a solution today, how are you going to reconciliate the killing of 40,000 people,
difficult,
20,000 people being detained?
From both sides, perhaps, it's difficult to reconciliate.
It's not both sides. We accept the liability and we said we've done a mistake. With everybody, we're human, we do mistakes. But is that an excuse to what Sisi done? Nobody can accept that.
Totally understand where you're coming from, but as our show is coming to an end tonight, I would like to ask a question for both of you, starting with you, Dr. Ghanem. What is the best scenario for Egypt today? General Sisi, very briefly, or not General Sisi, very briefly, if you can tell us. What is the best
No way, General Sisi, no way anybody as a person. We beyond that personality, we need democracy back. We have to put the wagon and the rail again and proceed democracy again.
Thank you. Mr. Omar Ismail from the Labour Party also maybe give us a hint of what they think about that.
Well, the Labour Party, and I do not profess that I speak on behalf of the Labour Party. The Labour Party, as it is at the moment, is still in a shadow government, and that, you know, it looks like the Labour Party would win the next general election.
Very
optimistic, of course. But I think the direction now is for formulating a new policy towards Egypt. There are a huge amount of work has been done through a number of organizations, including mine, the Egyptian UK, and other organizations involved with the Labour Party, and also the people from the government trying to change the policy towards Egypt.
Thank you very much for both of you. Let me now, even though actually I'm very much enjoying this debate, I'm afraid today's episode will have to come to an end. I'd like to thank all of you once again for participating. We learned from Nervana Mahmoud, who joined us over the telephone previously, about the violations that she saw under the Muslim Brotherhood. However, she said as well that she's not for a military rule. She refuses to be labeled, of course, when it comes to politics in Egypt. And Mr. Omar Ismail from the Labour Party in the UK told us about the violations as well of the Muslim Brotherhood, and he believes there is no democracy possible under the Muslim Brotherhood, and the way they relate their policies to Islam is sort of rejected by Mr. Ismail. And Dr. Al-Ghanem also from the Muslim Brotherhood refuses to any idea or any potential chance even that General Sisi will take power, because he believes it defeats the democracy, the foundations on which the Muslim Brotherhood is based. Thank you very much again for joining us today, and
Pleasure.
We should hope to see you again soon.
Absolutely.
And thanks for watching us, and if for more updates, please visit Levant.tv. Thanks for watching Straightforward, and bye for now.